It's Ash from Super Videos, back to talk about The Walking Dead Season 10. This is going to be my things you may have missed and Easter eggs for Season 10, Episode 11, which was called Morning Star. So, for those of you that don't know, we have this new series where we talk about things you may have missed and Easter eggs or callbacks in episodes that aired. This one's going to be Season 10, Episode 11. We already did Season 10, Episode 9 and 10. Make sure to go check those out. We will continue doing these videos for the rest of Season 10. If there's enough interest, we will continue doing them for Season 11 as well. So if you do enjoy the content and if you want to see it continue, make sure to press the like button to let me know that you enjoy the content and you want to see more of these for Season 11. So with that said, let's jump right into it. The first thing we're going to talk about is something that actually connects the start and end of this episode. So of course at the beginning of the episode, Beta and the Whispers are gathering tree sap. And they actually use this tree sap, they make a ball out of it, and they shoot them with slingshots towards the hilltop and the survivors. And of course, like we saw, it explodes on the surface it hits and everyone gets sap all over them. Now the reason why they did this is because the tree sap is actually flammable. And that works really well during the attack because they shoot arrows with flame on them towards the hilltop. Of course, because of the tree sap, because it's flammable, when it hits, it's going to start a huge fire. So that was the Whisper's strategy here, and I think that it was very, very effective. The other thing that it was really effective for is because this doesn't necessarily kill the survivors, it just burns them alive and kills them that way, but it doesn't destroy their brain. So they can still use them as their horde, like Alpha said she wanted. The next callback we're going to talk about is something that happened between Negan and Alpha. So the scene where we have Negan punishing Alpha is a callback to something that happened in Season 9, Episode 16, which was called The Storm, which actually happened in a sort of post-credit scene where we had the storm taking place, the winter period and all of that, and then it skips time and then we have Beta punishing Alpha. So this was a callback to that, and it shows that Negan is possibly becoming Alpha's new Beta. The next callback relates to Eugene and Stephanie's conversation in the radio. So when they were talking, they realized that they both saw the satellite crash. So that basically helped both of them realize that they're pretty close. And so this led to them talking a bit more about their whereabouts, and it led to Stephanie finally revealing to Eugene where she's from and where they can meet. And we actually saw the satellite crash that we're talking about in Season 10, Episode 1, which was called Lines We Cross. So it was a callback or an Easter egg to that scene from the premiere of Season 10. The next scene we're going to talk about is the scene between Ezekiel and Carol. So Carol goes to Daryls' camp, and this is actually how Ezekiel knew where to go. He figured that Carol would probably go to Daryls' spot. It's Daryls' spot, it's Daryls' camp. It's where Daryl actually used to stay at after Rick disappeared. If you remember, Daryl kind of went away and did his own thing, and he was isolated from everyone else, and this was the exact same camp that he used to stay at. We saw that camp in Season 9, Episode 7, which was called Stradivarius, so this was a callback to that moment. The next Easter egg is this scene right here. Now, what Lydia is saying here doesn't matter, it's not important, but what's in the background is important. You see the tower. So the tower is actually an Easter egg for a big comic moment that's going to be coming up in the next few episodes. And it's going to relate to Beta. For comic readers, you know exactly which scene I'm talking about. But for non-comic readers, just expect to see something big related to a tower like this and Beta. Also, we know Season 10, Episode 15 is called The Tower. So that might actually be precisely the episode where we see this iconic comic moment that relates to the tower coming to life. And I definitely think that the tower here is a tease at what we're going to see in Season 10, Episode 15. The next Easter egg is this scene right here. So we see RJ, he's actually wearing Daryl's vest and a cowboy hat. I think it could be Judith's, and it could be the same one that Rick had that he gave to Carl, and now Judith has it, but it could be just another hat. And we actually see later on Judith paint the vest. So one of the wings was ripped apart, so Judith actually painted for the wing that was ripped apart, and he actually gave it to Daryl. And that's the exact same vest that Daryl is wearing during the hilltop battle at the end of the episode. The next callback or Easter egg is these roadblocks that we see. So someone set up these roadblocks. We actually see someone who's hanged. It's one of the guards. Now this is a callback, a direct callback to something that happened in Season 6, Episode 16, the season finale of Season 6, Last Day on Earth. This is when Negan and the Saviors showed up, and the roadblock was set up by the Saviors, and they actually hanged one of the library residents, if you remember. So that's a callback to that. It's an Easter egg, and it's actually more than just an Easter egg and more than just a callback. It's actually something that most likely Negan did. Now, he might not have necessarily done it himself. He might have had the Whispers do it for him, but he was the one that came up with this idea because he's done it before. This actually connects to Negan's advice to Alpha. Remember, Negan said, "I have advice for you," so this could have been his advice. And it's actually interesting because when they do find these roadblocks, it's actually Negan's theme that's playing in the background. So that's pretty awesome, and it gives us a hint that Negan was the mastermind behind this idea. So the Saviors did the exact same thing to the survivors before. This is precisely why Daryl knows that Negan is with the Whispers, because he's seen it before. He knows that it must have been Negan who did this because he did it before to them. So that's pretty awesome. Now I think, going back to this scene with the guy hanging, I think the reason why they didn't show who killed this guy here is because it wasn't Negan. I think that Whispers did it. It was Negan's plan to set up the roadblocks and to kind of intimidate the survivors, but I don't think he necessarily physically killed these guards himself. The next callback we're going to talk about is a conversation between Ezekiel and Carol. So when we have Ezekiel coming clean about his cancer, Carol tells him, "Don't bullshit a bullshitter." So Ezekiel was trying to lie to Carol and not tell her what's going on, but Carol read through his lies, and that was a cool callback to something that happened in Season 7, Episode 2, which was Ezekiel's introduction episode, which was called The Well. In that episode, Carol was the one that was lying to Ezekiel, and it was Ezekiel who told Carol, "Don't bullshit a bullshitter." So it's the opposite now, and I love that Easter egg or that callback to that moment in Season 7, Episode 2. The next scene we're going to talk about is this scene here where Ezekiel is laying in bed. Now this is an Easter egg not to something that happened in the comics, but to something that might potentially be coming up. I think this is teasing at Ezekiel healing when they get to this big community that we're going to see, which is connected to Eugene communicating with Stephanie on the radio. The next scene is this scene here where we have Lydia looking at this drawing. It's actually a heart, and in the middle of the heart it says H plus L, Henry plus Lydia. Henry most likely drew this when Henry and Lydia were together. The next Easter egg or callback is this one. So first, Carol watches the paintings on the wall. Now these were actually painted by Jadis. Glenn, Negan's Lucille victim, being one of them. Now, this could either be a tease at Maggie's return, or it could be a tease that we might finally find an answer about who let Negan out. Then she goes outside to talk to Daryl. In that scene, Daryl is looking at the graves, and that was a callback to Rick looking at Glenn and Abe's grave in 801, who are of course Negan's Lucille victims. And the other connection is that Daryl was responsible for Glenn dying because he punched Negan. Daryl was responsible for Glenn dying, and Carol was responsible for Connie and Magna's quote-unquote death. So that's another connection. Next thing we're going to talk about is the electric wires that they set up to kill the walkers that were coming in as part of Alpha's horde. That was actually a callback to something that happened in Season 7, Episode 9, which was called Rock in the Road. If you remember, Rick and Michonne planned this thing where they had ropes connecting the two cars together, and they drove through the herd, slicing them as they were driving through them. So this was a callback to that. It's not just like a callback, it's actually them using the same strategy that they used before. So I'm sure that they just used the same exact idea, and Eugene just made it a lot more efficient and a lot better. The next thing we're going to talk about is part of the battle at Hilltop. So if you missed it, Mary and Lydia were both there, and they were fighting alongside the other survivors. So that was a pretty cool scene as well, and it's something that some people may have missed. The next thing we're going to talk about is this scene here where Negan asks Alpha, I thought you were going to get them to surrender. This connects to what he asked Alpha for earlier on in the episode, where he's like, I have some advice for you. You'll feel a lot better if you have them join instead of slaughtering them. So Negan is asking, I thought that we had an understanding. I thought that you agreed that, we were going to get them to surrender instead of killing them. And that's where Alpha says, they are going to join me. They're going to become my horde. And that's where Negan says, you are badass. So that was a pretty cool scene. Now, it's not really what Negan was thinking. Negan didn't want Alpha to kill the survivors. Negan wanted to get them to join because, that would buy them enough time for Negan to do what he needs to do. Last but not least, Negan was also a part of the Whispers who shot the arrows with flames on them towards the hilltop. Now, does this mean Negan is truly a Whisperer? Maybe. We don't know where he shot. He could have aimed somewhere else. He wants to gain Alpha's trust, so he's just playing along. And that's pretty much the final thing I wanted to talk about. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do enjoy the content and you want us to continue this Easter egg and things you may have missed video for season 11, make sure to press the like button so I know. That's pretty much it for this video. See you next time for another super video. If you like what you see, press like, subscribe for more content, and press the bell button to receive notifications for daily uploads.